So yeah, one topic that I wanted to kind of touch with you on is spiritual bypass,
Yeah.
right? And my understanding of what spiritual bypass is, where you start using spiritual ideas or spiritual idealism in a way which is not yet your experience to dismiss dealing with your own traumas or your deficiency stories, as you call them.
Some suffering.
Yeah, some suffering, to kind of hide your suffering. And that in a way is a form of ego, kind of an aversion to not let things that are hidden to come into the present, into the awareness.
Yeah.
And so I know that you deal with that in your work and also in your spiritual journey. So if it's possible, if you could address what to you is spiritual bypass and how do you see it in trauma work, in psychotherapy, but also how have you also seen it in your spiritual experience in your work?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, I like how you defined it. Some kind of attempt to, when there is some suffering, mental, somatic suffering in the body, I'm resorting to some spiritual understanding or technique or deep pointer in order to somehow escape, transcend as soon as possible, escape, not feel, avoid this thing, and go to higher ground. And this bypassing, like avoiding of suffering, which is going to make the suffering longer. It's a pitfall on the path. And as you said, it can be done, I'll give you some example where more like, let's say, a simple level of new agey self-help kind of modalities that may encourage spiritual bypassing and going all the way to seekers of enlightenment and Ramana, lovers of Ramana teachings and stuff like that. So like some basic example is this thing with the law of attraction and cultivating being positive and being positive somehow in this idea that, oh, what you hold in mind is going to manifest. So be careful. Don't spend time feeling fear or this or that for too long because you are going to manifest. So let me right away shift into gratitude or shift into what is it? What's on my vision board? And I'm grateful. Thank you, God, for all of this. And somehow doing something to shift right away from a negative feeling into a positive feeling. The positive feeling, yeah. So, or this kind of visualization to kind of manifest. Let's say I'm feeling unhappy and miserable, and I feel that underneath, I might not even know that, but subconsciously I feel like unlovable. I don't deserve love and affection, and there's something wrong with me, and I'm broken. These are there in the back of the mind. On top of that, I'm pursuing spirituality. I'm trying to have the law of attraction manifest, the ideal partner and the ideal company. So I'm now visualizing how would I feel if the ideal partner will meet me and then I'll finally be happy, and how, going into all of that. So this would be somehow not bringing present awareness, not allowing this negative content, whatever, sadness, sense of unworthiness, loss, aloneness, fear, anxiety, somehow being afraid of it like hot potatoes, and then trying to do something with it. And at a higher level, yeah, I feel that although non-duality from one angle, it's one of the highest teachings towards pointing towards what we are in a direct fashion. And the nature of that, it has a strong, depending on the teacher and the lineage and what's happening there, it has a strong possibility, tendency to bypass. An example of non-dual bypassing is like, well, yeah, so I'm feeling something that's somehow unpleasant in the body. There's some sense of lack or something. So yeah, I'm instructed to allow it, welcome it, but don't stay with it too long. That's also the welcoming can be not true welcoming. So I'm doing this welcoming of this sense of lack or unpleasant feeling. There might be the secret agenda to get rid of it by welcoming it because I don't want it. And then even if I welcome it completely, which is hard. It's hard because trauma and deeply seated stuff, they are not coming up. It is hidden. It only come only when you are very triggered or something. So this thing that, hey, just rest as awareness and let things come and go. They come and they go, and I'm the watcher of it. This is not real. This is object in awareness. This is not me. Well, the deepest programs that create the deepest suffering, they don't come and go in meditation. There's not going to come too much in satsang, and there's a deep element of repression connected to trauma, and the messages connected to trauma impact. So what we can do is that there is this sense of, I often see in satsangs, and even with wonderful teachers that I still resonate with, something comes in the chest, or there's something in the chest, in the belly, and okay, welcome it, allow it, and then, but know that you are not this, and you are the presence which is aware of it. So why bother stay with what you are not and go back to what you really are? And just go back to what you really are, and this will take care of everything. That's the some of the message we get. So my experience is not quite like that. And that burning in my chest is not burning in my chest. It's a whole program. It's a whole maybe unprocessed trauma where it's also like thoughts there that says, it's not safe to be myself because of this and because of that. So in these feelings and somatic unpleasantness, they are usually hidden thoughts that are not coming up just by letting it come and go. It needs more skillful, directed, pointed investigation, ego investigation, basically. So in spite of the great benefits of pursuing some of these direct path teachings, which were many benefits, at the same time, I would still not process what creates suffering. And then when something will come up, there will be like, oh, okay, well, this is here again. Okay, all right, well, let me welcome it. Let's just be the presence in which it appears. And then I'm not this. There's no me in this sensation. The sensation arises in me. But that was attachment wound, attachment trauma, attachment, abandonment, rejection. They will come over and over and over until I face it. And actually, Francis was saying to us, me, like, hey, man, when somebody's come, let it devour you. Let it devour you. Let it eat you up. Yeah, I deeply resonate with that. However, this is not a good pointer for people who have PTSD and trauma and all of that, because you can't let trauma devour you. You need to do it piece by piece within the window of tolerance. Otherwise, one gets re-traumatized, dysregulated. So I needed to do a lot of more like stuff, focus on particular things in order to do what Francis was saying. So only after I got more into these killer inquiries and somatic processing, I could open those files piece by piece and let every thought and feeling about this be witnessed and face it, rather than take the higher ground of being the aware witnessing.
Right. Well, a lot comes because I've also been somewhat on the non-dual path. I mean, it's such a can of worms here. So maybe I'll share a few things that come to me. The non-dual path is interesting. It's a Western word. To me, one thing that's surprising is every tradition on the planet is actually non-dual, whether it's Native American or it's Islam or it's the Indian pantheon of Kashmir Shaivism, Christianity. I mean, the non-duality is just the one spirit, the unity of being, the oneness.
Yeah.
The only difference is that I feel like in the West, you kind of start from there, like you are that, or you are God, you are that, the presence. And then quickly, when the bypass happens, it is at the expense of the traumas. When someone says they are that, it might actually not be an experience. And when it's not an experience, then it's something co-opted by the ego. And it becomes complex because now you're in a group where you're in an echo chamber. And it's like with any group psychology, right? You repeat a certain narrative among each other, and it takes a reality of its own.
Yeah.
In this case, what is being said is closer to truth or is more resonant with truth. So it's better than saying, oh, I'm a victim, I'm threatened, I'm an insignificant human being. And now that I feel threatened, I'm going to live my life from, trying to build security and feel like everybody is attacking me. So definitely to know that I might be the creator or I might be the presence is much better. But one of the things that I've faced myself is that I felt like that I had these traumas and I felt I was inhibited. And there was a lack of creativity. I couldn't do the things that I felt like I should do. But people will tell me that I already know what I am. So all is good, and I had a good life in a way, a good job, supposedly, and things were comfortable, but I did not want to just stay comfortable. I wanted to fully express and be creative. So that is one aspect. And when I look at it, what I find is that the Western non-duality in a way is cherry-picked. Because if you look at the traditions where it comes from, they come with, it only gives a context in which the sadhana, in which the practice happens. So it sets the proper view for you to do your practices and more affirm and align them. And also not to negate the other aspect that we were talking about earlier, which is becoming. So what is the reason for this kind of cherry picking? And some of the things that I've learned in my investigation, that it has to do with colonization and invasion that happened in the past, where the invaders, the Western invaders, when they came to these countries, they tried to subjugate the traditions and portray them in the form of like a tourist industry, because they were not adepts. They were not people who were practicing these traditions, but they were looking from the outside. A quick example of that is in the Indian continent, there was a lot of feminine practices, Shakti-based practices. And a lot of, people like Carl Jung have studied them, for example, in the West, but not everybody. And these feminine worship were actually forces in the psyche or forces in the universe. And the practices that are based on these actually bring them into your experience so that you can see the play of creation and get these archetypes in your experience. But that's not seen in the West at all. And even, for example, when people talk about Ramana, people don't talk about the devotional hymns that Ramana wrote about Arunachala, the mountain, right? And same about Shankaracharya. He's another apostle of Advaita Vedanta. He was also a worshiper of the Shaktis. So I think that's a collective bypass of these traditions and a continuation of masculinity and colonial thought processes that, in the recent past have taken over the world. But I feel that there is a resurgence, I feel, is a big component, because they're not being true to the very traditions.
Yeah, like with yoga, we took something out of yoga, but yoga is a comprehensive path, very complex. And this took something out of Advaita Vedanta, which was like a whole structure, a whole architectural thing, and we take just one floor, and it becomes Neo Advaita. That becomes a more serious problem.
All I wanted to highlight was that it's much more complex than it looks like.
Yeah.